Chapter 29. Cities begin upon the day the walls of the shambles go up, to screen away blood and bloodletting, animals' cries, smells and soil, from residents already grown fragile before country realities. The better off live far as they may from the concentration of slaughter. Soon country melancholics are flocking to town like crows, darkening the sun. Dressed meats appear in the market. Sausages hang against the sky, forming lines of text, cryptic intestinal commentary. The Veery brothers, professional effigy makers, run an establishment south of the shambles at 2nd and Market Streets by the courthouse. Mason, in unabating search after the grisly, must pay a visit. Can't just have any old bundle of rags up there, even 'tis meant to be burnt to ashes, can we? Says Cosmo. Our mobility like to feel they're burning something, don't you see? Oh, we do jackboots and petticoats, bread and butter items the year round. Yet we strive for at least the next order of magnitude. Here, for example, our public beheading model, adds his brother Damien, or the topper, as we like to call it. Key to everything being the neck, of course. For after you've led them up to the one great moment, how can you disappoint 'em with anything less than that nice, satisfying chunk as the blade strikes, isn't it? And will pure beeswax do the job? No, fine for the head and whatever, but look what you've got to chop at. Spine, throat, muscles in the neck. Well, not exactly wax, is it? So it's on with the old smock. Lovely visit next door, scavenging among the appropriately sized necks for bones and suet and such. Then it's up to the kiddie here to cover it all over and give it a head with a famous, or better, infamous face. He's a rare wax artist, our Cosmo is. Likeness is almost from another world. Perhaps not a world many of us would find that comfortable. Products of the innocent hive, sir, and beneath the refuse of the daily slaughter. Yes, there you have it. A grisly amalgam, perhaps even a sort of teaching. Sure you'd enter any darkened room our lads and lasses happen to be in, only upon ill advice, indeed. Which, of course, is exactly what Mason runs out and contrives to do, as soon as he gets a chance. He and Dixon go tavern hopping and find secret society meetings in the back rooms of every place they visit. There is gambling, Madeira, carryings on, no bare-breasted acolytes in chains, no ritual deflorations, drinking games with Madeira, that's it. Some of these collegia, learning that Mason's name is Mason, claim to be Freemasons of one lodge and another. Anyone whose name is Mason is automatically a member, the first of your name likely having worked as a stonemason back in the era of the great cathedrals. As you are descended from him, so are Freemasons today descended from his guild fellows. You are a Mason ex nomine, as some might describe it. Unless, of course, 'twas an elaborate scheme to avoid paying for drink. In one of these ale venues, somewhere between the Indian Queen and the Duke of Gloucester, there proves to be a back room's back room. For purposes of uninvited inspection, a pantry, but in fact an arsenal for various mob activities. Anyone else out in search of Gothical experiences might have found it neither quite ancient nor ominous enough to bother with, but Mason can ever locate those spaces most fertile for the husbanding of melancholy. So now, blundersome, in he steps, candleless as well, relying upon the light of a lanthorn hanging outside the small window, waiting for his eyes to adjust, making out first 2 figures, then 3, and at length the roomful, erect, crowding close, without breath or pulse. His immediate need is to speak, not challenging, but pleading. Slowly, as he is able to make out more of the faces, what he fears grows less deniable. They are directing, nowhere but into his own eyes, stares unbearable with meaning he cannot grasp, as if he does not wish to examine this too closely, as if they know him, and withal expect him. Mason is certain he saw at least one of them at the first meeting with the commissioners, the week previous, though that being largely ceremonial, all the faces then had been framed in more or less identical wigs. Yet if he recognizes me, Mason asks himself now, why doesn't he speak? Groping within for the gentleman's name as the enigmatic fizz continues in the weak light to sharpen toward revelation. As it will prove, all the effigies in the back room bear faces of commissioners for the boundary line, though Mason, anxiously upon the lookout wherever in town they have to go, won't appreciate it till the second meeting on 1 December. The calm oval room has been furnished hastily, but minutes before their arrival, with a perfect row of black, comb-backed chairs for the commissioners, set upon one side of a long table, facing a window revealing a late autumnal garden. White statues of uncertain gender leaning in sinuous poses, and across the table 2 chairs of ordinary Second Street origin and faux Chippendale carving, unmatched, intended for the astronomers, who will have little to look at but the commissioners. Luckily for Mason, the gentlemen enter not all in a troop, but in ones and pairs, so giving him a few extra moments in which to work upon his composure, which needs it. Those waxen faces that gazed at him with such midnight intent. Here are their daytime counterparts to greet him with the same, "O God in thy mercy," the same look, as if deliberately to recall the other night. But how could they? How could anyone know? Has he been under surveillance ever since landing here? And the figures in that far back room, were they not effigies at all, but real people only pretending to be effigies? Yet these very faces, what did he interrupt them at then in the lampless chamber? What gathering he wasn't supposed to know about? And why couldn't he remember more clearly what had happened to him after he went into the room? Was his brain in mercy withholding the memory? As the progress of wax automata by ones and twos approaches, provoking, daring Mason to bring any of it up, the possibility never presents itself to him that all the line commissioners from both provinces, being political allies of the proprietors, are natural and obvious effigy fodder to a mobility of rent payers, as will be later pointed out by Dixon, who now has begun casting him curious, offended looks. Neither has slept well for a fortnight. Amid the house-rocking ponderosities of commercial drayage, the barrels and sledges rumbling at all hours over the paving stones, the town on a hammering and bricklaying itself together about them, the street sellers' cries, the unforeseen coalescences of sailors and citizens anywhere in the neighbouring night to sing liberty and wreak mischief, hoof-beats in large numbers passing beneath the window, the cries of beasts from the city shambles, Philadelphia in the dark, in an all-night din residents may have got accustomed to, but which seems to the astronomers not yet detached from the liquid, dutiful lurches of the packet through the October seas, the very mill of hell. Worse than London by far, Mason brushing away bugs, rolling over and over, 4 sides at 5 minutes per side, a goose upon insomnia's spit, uncontrollably humming to himself an idiotic gallop from the Rebel Weaver, which he attended in London just before departure, instead of Mr. Arne's Love in a Cottage, which would have been wiser. Smells of wood smoke, horses and human sewage blow in the windows along with the noise. Somewhere down the street a midnight church congregation sings with a fervency unknown in Sapperton, or in Bisley for that matter. He keeps waking with his heart racing, fear in his bowels, something loud having just occurred, waiting for it to repeat. And as he relaxes, never knowing the precise moment it begins, the infernal diddly, 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 diddly again. The Rebel Weaver was set in the Golden Valley, being a light-hearted account of the late battles there between weavers and clothiers, with interludes of music, juggling, and tricksome animal life. Strangely, Mason has reported to Dixon, I was not appalled, though I've every reason to be. The plot, about a weaver's son who loves the daughter of a clothier, and the conflict of loyalties resulting, presents nothing more troubling sentimentally than the comic misunderstandings of an Italian opera. 1 or 2 of the slower tunes, lugubrious to some ears, he even yet fancies, though this damned galop is another matter. Upon his own side of the bed, Dixon snores in a versatility of tone that Mason, were he less anxious about getting to sleep, might be taking notes upon, perhaps to be written up and submitted to the Philosophical Transactions. So unexpectedly polyphonic do some passages emerge, all at the same unhurried yet presently infuriating andante. Both men lie in the clothing they have worn all day. Dixon as faithful to field surveyor's custom as Mason to that of the stargazer, his quotidian dress at Greenwich having ever doubled as his observing suit. To sleep one simply took off the coat. Though Dixon has advised him against this here, he is right, of course. The bugs run free, American bugs, who so much resent being brushed off human surfaces that they will bite anyone for even approaching. That's it then. Himself a giant bug, he rolls quietly from under the counterpane and crawls from the room, dresses in the hallway and upon the stairs, and is soon insensibly translated into the Orchid Tavern by Dock Creek. Hat beside him, cue a snarl, buying too many rounds, enjoying viciously as any recreational traveller the quaint stridencies of a politics not yet his own. Yet, before intoxication sets in, continuing to seek, somewhere in the perilous text of faction, insult and threat, a line or two of worth to take home with him. Pennsylvania politics. Its name is simplicity. Religious bodies here cannot be distinguished from political factions. These are Quaker, Anglican, Presbyterian, German pietist. Each prevails in its own area of the province. Till about 5 years ago, the Presbyterians fought among themselves so fiercely that despite their great numbers, they remained without much political effect. Lately, since the old and new lights reached their accommodation, all the other parties have hastened to strike bargains with them as they may. Not least of these, the Penns, who, though Quaker by ancestry, are Anglican by praxis. Some even say tools of Rome. Mr. Shippen, upon whom you must wait for each penny you'll spend, is a Presbyterian, the city variety, quite at ease as a member of the Governor's Council. As for the Anglicans of Philadelphia, the periodic arrival in town of travelling ministries such as the Reverend McClenaghan's have now split those folk between traditional Pennites and reborns adazzle with the new light, who are more than ready to throw in with the Presbyterians against the Quakers, though so far Quakers have been able to act in the assembly as a body and prevail. Not sure I'm following this, Mason says. May you never have the need, sir. 'Tis useful none the less, now and then, to regard politics here as the greater American question in miniature, in the way that chess represents war, with Governor Penn a game piece in the form of the king. Who'd be the Rockingham Whigs, I wonder? At a short arpeggio from the clavier, a voice through the vapours announces, "The moment you've been waiting for! The saloon of the Orchid Tavern is pleased to present the famed Leyden Jar Dance Macabre, with that Euclid of the electric, Philadelphia's own Poor Richard, in the part of Death." Eager applause, as into the lanthorn light comes a hooded, scythe-bearing figure in skeleton's disguise, though the instant it begins to speak, all sinister impression is compromised. "Ah, excellent. Now, if I might have a few volunteers from what obviously here tonight is the flower of Philadelphian youth. Behold, pilgrims of prodigy, my new battery, 24 jars crackling and ready." Dr. Franklin, now throwing back his hood to reveal lenses tonight of a curious shade of aquamarine, allowing his eyes to be viewed, yet conveying a bleak contentment that discourages lengthy gazing, Come, gentlemen, who'll be next? That's it, good, line of fops, all hold hands, line of fops. How many have we now? Dear me, not enough. Come, one more, ever room for one more. Thus, briskly collecting into line a dozen or so heedless continentals, placing into the hands of the hindmost a copper cable from one terminal of the battery, and grasping the hand of the frontmost, Franklin reaches with the blade of his scythe to touch the other terminal. The landlord at that same instant dousing the glim, so that the resulting tableau is lit by terrific stark flashes of blue-white light, amid the harsh sputter of the fulminous fluid and the giggling, and indeed screaming, of the participants, snuff flying everywhere, and now and then igniting in billows of green flame, amid infernal columns of smoke. The battery having discharged, light is restored, the company presently regaining enough composure to note the arrival of a thunder gust, as windows begin to rattle and trees to creak, and the landlord rushes about trying to draw the curtains, as thereby the hearty opposition of these electrophiles, whose wish is ever to observe their admired fluid in its least mediated form. "So much for Harlequin," cries Dr. Franklin. "Let us get out into the night's main drama. There's weather gear for all. This scythe here is the perfect shape to catch us a bolt. Perhaps a good many. Better than a key upon a kite, indeed. Think of it as death's picklock. Come, form your line, all here," pulling his hood up again. "Felonious entry into the ante-rooms of the Creator. Not joining us tonight, Mr. Mason," lowering his lenses and staring for an instant. Before Mason, from whom all comfort has flown, can quite reply, the figure has turned and taken a hand at the end of the line. The door opens and the wind and rain blow in, thunder crashes, and with odd strangled cries of amusement, the party of seekers are plunged out into the storm and vanished.